Okay. Well, welcome everyone. I'm really glad you guys got to join today. I'm going to find a good place for this to sit. There we go. We're going to put it right up there. Thank you for joining us, you guys. I can't believe that it's October. I don't know how we got this, like we've gotten this far this quickly. That's insane, but here we are. We've got writing assignments coming up. We've got midterms coming up, the whole nine. And if you guys, have taken a couple history classes, or if you've just started in a history class, you know that we love our writing in history. So we're going to go over today effective history writing. So skills, the process, the whole nine, start to finish. We'll go over what is a good process for writing for your history courses and what are some good skills. So the primary thing that we do in the HERC is review writing. We review drafts from start to finish. And there are a lot of common concerns, common challenges that students face, but also their own concerns with how they're approaching their paper. So the number one thing is your thesis statement. Oftentimes we'll get students come in who are trying to make their thesis statement a little bit stronger, or don't really know how to approach it, don't really know how to write it, or how to implement it in the paper. Conveying ideas is also one of the struggles that students commonly have with, and a concern that they have, making sure that their ideas are conveyed adequately. So basically taking what you wrote in your argument, in your thesis statement, and then making sure that it's clearly developed throughout the paper. Evidence, our examples, our citations, our support. That is also another one that we often see. Evidence and examples, being tied in. How do we paraphrase? How do we, lead into a direct quotation? How much of a quotation do we use? How do we talk about that quotation, that evidence, that example? So those are a couple of things that we usually see students struggle with, and that they themselves, come in asking for help with. So, like I said in the beginning, we are going to be covering the whole process of writing, start to finish, from the moment that you get that, prompt in your hand, the moment that you hear that you have an assignment for writing, a writing assignment assigned to you. We will go over getting started, outlining it, writing your rough draft or drafts, preferably, reviewing and editing, and then formatting and citations, which will lead you to a beautiful little paper that you can submit to your Dropbox or your instructor. So getting started and the work that you put into the getting started phase is one of the most important phases. And I say this because it sets you up for success. If you start by reading the prompt, asking any questions you need for clarification, gather everything that you need, reading materials, if you need to research, things like that, you take good notes and you write your outline, you are going to be set up, and writing will be so much easier, because writing is so much more than just sitting down and starting at the introduction, going to the conclusion. It's the whole thing. So we're going to go over all of this and the little, tips and tricks that we have to share with you guys in each one of these steps. So the prompt. When we get the prompt, you may find it on eCourseWare, you may be handed it directly in class. Either way, make sure that you have a printed or digital copy. I usually like to have a printed copy to highlight and annotate, but I've also been using digital copies because you can do the same thing in Word. It just depends on your preference. So when we have that prompt out in front of us, we've got it sitting down in front of us, we are going to highlight and annotate. Annotating mean, write, little sentences, like 3, words, to kind of make notes of things that we need to remember. And highlighting, of course, we want to highlight important information. We want to highlight our due dates, keywords, and themes. So if there's a particular era that the prompt is asking you to look at, highlight that. We want to, highlight formatting. So 12-point font, how, large the margins should be, how many pages there should be, do they want a page number, etc. Well, page numbers. The citation style, usually citation styles in the history department and for history as a whole is Chicago Manual of Style, but your instructor may have a specific way that they want you to cite your sources. So just make sure to highlight that in your prompt. And if it's not there, go ahead and ask. And specific questions, your prompt and your instructions may include specific questions that they want you to answer. I know we've seen a couple this semester that have, option A, option B, where, you answer the specific question. Highlight that. That's very important. And it's very good that you have that there because it gives you a clear sense of direction. Time periods. So again, that's part of that important information, right? Your keywords and themes. So if it says from this date to that date, highlight it. If it says this era between, at the early 19th century, write down what that time frame is, because it'll be really helpful in guiding your thought process. Once you've got all of this highlighted, make sure that it's accessible to you throughout the writing process. So, if you have it printed, keep it right next to you. If you are typing and you like to do things digitally, keep it up on the screen next to you, split the screen in half, whatever you want to do, because it's going to help serve as a reminder of the purpose of the assignment, the instructions you've been given, what your focus should be, etc. Because the whole reason we are going through this prompt and highlighting these things and making annotations, making little notes, is because we want to set ourselves up to avoid confusion and stress. The worst thing is when you go to do the assignment, you get it all done, you feel great, you feel like you did a really good job, and then you realize you've missed like a vital key piece of information, and we want to avoid that. So this helps you, get your head on straight, get some clarity, and feel confident moving forward.
Another thing that we do is also make sure that we gather and read your materials. So make sure you have that information as well. This is important for really determining what you read, determine the reading materials that you need to complete the assignment. Make sure that this is based on the prompt. You'll need to know, specifically what articles or other, required materials that you'll need to have in order to do your assignment. Also, keep in mind the information that's highlighted in your prompt or in your instructions. Make sure you read what you need to read and write in your notes based on the information. Like Kelsey mentioned as well, formatting your notes with your questions on your topics to make sure you answer the question and have the information you need. It's usually helpful to have as well. Some general guidance for reading. It's what we like to call the 5 W's, and it's a good way to get through your readings and guide your readings as well. The who, the what, the when, the where, and the why. So who wrote the document? Who is the document discussing? What is the document about? What's going on in the document? Roughly, when is it taking place and where is it taking place? And most importantly, the why. Why is this document significant? Why does this document matter? We also have guides for reading primary sources and secondary sources as well, and as well as for critical thinking, which we'll also make available for you as well. Make sure you also check out any social media announcements that we also have, because we usually promote worksheets and also have guides as well. And before moving on, make sure you go over your notes and make sure that you're on the right track and that you gathered your information for all the readings. And this is the best and honestly the most effective way to answer your prompt as well.
Yeah, so like Demaria said, we want to make sure we're on the right track and that we have everything together before we move on. Again, it's that clarity that we want to make sure that we have before moving on to the writing, because I promise the writing will be so much easier once you have kind of gone through these steps. It helps you think through things and prepare. So the outline, I know we all have love-hate relationships with outlines. I personally have a love relationship with outlines now that I have developed a system that works for me. And that's also a big point that I'd like to make about all of these, things, is find what makes what works for you. But generally speaking, your outline should include an introduction, a thesis, which has your thesis statement within it. But I, bulleted thesis statement as a separate point, because it's important to know that that's a big part of it, even though it's technically under the bullet point of introduction. Your body paragraphs and conclusion. So these are the just key components of your outline, which I'm sure you already know about, but it's important to note because that's the structure of the outline. Your outline can be structured in several different ways as far as like how you format it. So there's the classic like kind of bulleted breakdown of an outline. One that I've seen, more recently has been a mind map, and those are incredibly helpful. And the HERC actually has a mind map for history paper writing in development. I know I've shown a couple of students just to help them visualize the process, but that's exactly what it serves as. If you are a visual learner and you'd like to see how things kind of are going to break down, then a mind map is absolutely the way to go for you. So I personally like a very detailed outline. Your outline can be as detailed as you need it to be, so long as it's enough to guide and keep you focused while you're writing. And the goal of the outline, why it's important to do, not in terms of traditional practices of writing, but it's important to you because it helps you think through the paper so that once you're done with your outline that you will meet that page count that you, or like in my case, I write too much sometimes so that I won't go over my page limit. So it's important for you to be able to really visualize and plan. So what makes a good paragraph? So before we head over to really getting into the anatomy of an outline, we want to think about what makes a good paragraph. And that includes focus, it needs to be focused, it needs to be clear, it needs to have good flow. So good flow of ideas. Think of it kind of like when you're putting together, like when you're talking about a conversation, there's a natural way that it should flow. It shouldn't flow like a conversation, but it should feel natural. It should connect to the thesis statement, connect back to the prompt. So again, making sure that it's focused. It's roughly about 5 sentences usually, but it can be longer. It just depends. But aim for 5 sentences if you're not sure how long you need it to be. Your thesis statement should serve as a guide. And there are usually 3 parts to a paragraph.
And for these 3 parts, the first part is your statement sentence, roughly 1 sentence, and it's going to be your opening sentence. This should be pretty direct in answering the question and include your main points. And that can include as many main points as you need to answer the question in the efficient paragraph length. Your next point is your reasoning. This is roughly 2 to 3 sentences. And these sentences should explain your reasoning behind your thesis statement and explain your main points, each sentence per point. The last part is your evidence, and this is roughly 2 sentences long. These sentences should pull evidence from the readings to reinforce your main points that you discussed earlier. And for the anatomy of an outline, now that we have established these critical elements for each paragraph, let's kind of apply this and create an outline. So first, you're going to have your introduction. It should introduce the topic of your paper and what you're going to be talking about. Next, should directly answer the question with your main points from the readings. A good way to think about it is kind of like a movie trailer. It doesn't tell you everything, no spoilers, but it also tells you enough to give you a good idea of what's your movie going to be about. Again, reiterating the 5 W's, this should answer the who, what historical individuals or groups are you mainly talking about, the what is the event, the cultural phenomenon, or a general topic, when, roughly the time period that it's taking place, where's the location, and most importantly, the why. Why are you writing about this? And leading up to the thesis statement or as part of your thesis statement. And your thesis statement should be your main goal for your paper or your overall argument. We have several guides and worksheets for writing thesis statements, and we can help you through this as well. It's a very common request, as Kelsey can attest to as well in the HERC. Your thesis statement can be the first or last sentence of your intro. It just depends on where it fits best. Next is your body paragraphs. Again, usually could be 3, but more or less depending on your instructions and the max page length that your professor assigns. If your thesis statement lists 3 points, then your body paragraphs should include 3 points. For your body paragraphs and each point you make, this should be supported with evidence and examples from your reading material. This includes your sources, page numbers, and what it is that you want to include, whether that's a direct quote, an idea you're introducing, things mentioned, etc. This keeps you on track and your sources on track that you're citing, rather than having to figure out where you remember seeing something as well. The last part is your conclusion. This should reiterate your thesis statement and state how you've elaborated or answered your thesis statement. And this can also be a place where you make any final statements or anything that was unique and stood out to you as well. Here you can bring all your ideas together and connect them. And you can also emphasize any important points, usually in relation to your thesis statement.
So something very important to point out. So we have all been, well, at least I was taught, there were several kind of things that you're taught in high school that just help you to understand at a base level what different parts of your writing and your papers should do, but at a very basic level. And there's, in college and especially history class gives you an opportunity to expand on those things. So what to avoid doing. In your introduction, you should really avoid summarizing or rephrasing the prompt. It can feel compulsive maybe to do that. But what ends up usually happening is that it obscures your main points that you're trying to make. And most all the students, if not all the students I've seen come in, no matter how much progress they've made with their paper, you guys all have really good ideas. And we just want you to walk out of the HERC, with a paper that really lets that shine through. We want that to be highlighted. So, avoiding summarizing or rephrasing the prompt really helps your ideas shine through. You also want to stay on topic. You want to stay focused. It can be really tempting to go on tangents, to go more in depth with things. I know that's something that I personally have a tendency to do, is to go way too deep into something. So I have to redirect, go back to the prompt, go back to my outline, make sure that I'm staying focused and I'm not getting too crazy in depth or going off on a separate tangent, because again, that obscures the main point of, the main points that you're making that's related to your thesis statement and is your thesis statement. And then for your conclusion, kind of the same that goes with the introduction. You don't want to rephrase. You don't want to, summarize what you already wrote. Your conclusion is really to, emphasize and to connect all your ideas together. So, like we said, the introduction is your movie trailer, and the conclusion brings all those ideas together, connects them, and emphasizes any main points. So things that relate to your thesis statement.
And for your rough drafts, reviewing and editing, the first step is your first draft. So when you're starting off, just get everything onto your paper. Don't worry about trying to make it perfect or sound pretty. It only needs to make sense to you at this point. Next, rely on your outline really as a guide. You can always make adjustments to structure the flow of it while you're also writing and trying to answer as well, and reviewing your material. Just let your thoughts flow, honestly, without interrupting your train of thought, because this stage is something where you really want to make something sound good. Next is your second draft. This is where you're reading through your rough draft, where you got all of your thoughts on your paper without having to consider how pretty it sounds or how well it's written. It's a good idea to run this through editing software, which are also free and paid for. For example, Grammarly or Hemingway Editor are similar and free softwares. Doing this will cut down on the amount of time that you will spend really trying to adjust the wording, structure your sentences, and things like that. You can always, as well, bring your paper to the HERC and ask us to run it through Grammarly, since we also have a paid version. But we can also look over it for you during the stage as well. Alternately, after cleaning it up a bit, what makes sense to another person, you can also bring it, back to us for each stage of your draft, and we're more than happy to help you. You would also benefit greatly from reading your paper out loud. I know it sounds kind of simple, but there's something about reading your paper out loud and just hearing your own thoughts and your voice. It helps you, capture things that you might miss and helps you edit better as well. And you can also, once again, use other sites, programs like Speechify to read it to you. Surprisingly, robots, also do a good job as well. So.
Yeah, the nice thing with Speechify and programs that will read things out loud to you is they have to follow the punctuation that you use. So if it starts to sound a little awkward or strange, or it's not flowing like the way that you intended it to flow, it's because probably some punctuation needs to be added, because that's it it's programmed to pick up on that kind of stuff.
And for your last draft or your third draft, this is your final read through. So this is usually the final draft. Since your second draft will typically correct any general issues or modifications that need to happen on the first draft. Once again, we're available in the HERC and happy to help you come through, not just for this stage, but others as well. And during the third draft, make sure you go over your instructions again to check off you have all your requirements, and make sure you've completed specific aspects that your professor is asking for, whether that be time period, topic, etc. This helps make sure that you're basically completing the assignment properly. And you want to do this for your thesis statement as well, to make sure that you talked about everything clearly and precisely that your professor wants you to address as well. For the last part, formatting and editing. This is where you take time to work on your citations and overall format of your paper. Check your instructions again for page counts, if there are any minimum or maximum page numbers, page counts, margins, spacing, font type, font size, if there's a cover page requirement, and more. When in doubt, double space times New Roman and 1-inch margins. You can never go wrong with the font size 12 as well. And include names, assignments, info in the header, or as a cover page. Make an effort to ask your instructor specifically about anything that you feel they haven't mentioned, or something that you may think you might be off with. Professors are always there to help. And for your citations, check your instructions as well for the citation styles that you'll need. The required style for history is usually the Chicago style, which is something that most students aren't familiar with until they come to history courses. But for your papers, make sure you check with your instructor as well, because there may be different other styles that they may have. You can manually type your citations, but there are citation generators. If you need a citation generator, make sure you check for errors, usually capitalization and straight, rather than any curly quotation marks or anything like that. And a reference as a quick guide to make sure everything's correct.
So some of the main takeaways we wanted you guys to walk away from this with is to understand the instruction, ask questions, advocate for yourself in that way. If you're confused about something, don't feel scared to ask a question, or if you're nervous to approach your instructor, please bring it to us and we'll help you in the best way possible. That way, at least feel a little better when you go to ask questions. We don't mind being, that first stop to kind of work out what you need to ask, or, help kind of start that process of clarification. And writing a detailed outline is super important. Like I said, the level of depth that you go into is up to you. I go very into detail. I've tried the more simple form, but I just prefer the more detailed outline. So I will include the exact, word for word quotes that I'd like to include. I will include how I want to paraphrase it, or roughly how I want to paraphrase it, or write a short note to myself about how I want to present it. So things like that. So totally up to you and how you format it. Use the instructions / the prompt as your checklist and to guide all phases of your writing. So like I said in the beginning, you want to make sure you have it over to the side on your, on your desk, up on the screen, whatever works for you. Use it as your guiding light, the lighthouse in the storm that guides ships to shore, whatever you want, however you want to think about it. But at the very end, it's especially important because it at least helps with a lot of stress and anxiety. But it's also good as a last checkpoint to double check that you have formatted everything correctly by looking over your instructions / prompt, that you've answered all the questions correctly. You may find that you didn't answer it exactly how it was worded. So then that gives you an opportunity to go back in and modify it a little bit, refocus it. So using it as a checklist is very important. And use all the resources available to make this process as smooth and stress-free as possible. So if you want, some help brainstorming, we are here for you for that. If you want help reading something, just all you have to do is stop by and ask the HERC, and we will, we usually have something. And if we don't have a guide or resource or worksheet readily available, we will make it for you. We have done it. So it's all about you. Again, it's all about you walking away feeling confident and feeling, a little bit better about approaching this assignment. So remember that the HERC is here to help you. And finally, as we have said multiple times throughout this presentation, and as Leslie Knope says so wonderfully, slight obsession with parks and recreation, but if you find any of these ideas, you like them, you want to modify them a little bit, feel free to take my ideas and take our ideas and make them better. That is totally acceptable. If you would like to stop by and you say, hey, this works for me, but I'm still, a little confused about this part, or I'm still a little worried about this part, then we can help you develop an idea that, or a process that works for you. So this is all about what works for you.
Absolutely.
And again, like I said, stop by. We are here for you. We've got several beautiful, colorful, well done flyers all throughout Mitchell Hall that have QR codes on them that bring you either to the website for the HERC, or it brings you to a PDF, which is basically kind of like your everything in one place guide to the HERC, what we do, our social media, etc. And speaking of social media, we are now on TikTok for the funnies and for study and history writing tips, tricks, and hacks. We have just dropped a 7-part series for effective history writing. So you'll see that on there as well. And it's really simple. It's just U of M HERC. But if you follow us on Instagram or on Facebook, that information is all there for you guys too. And we're happy to share it in the comments if you guys would like to take a look at it. Best part is you can download all the videos on TikTok as your own individual videos and keep them forever. So with that, I will, we are open for questions.